Today I'm going to be talking about your rights as consumers, and may not be the best topic for funeral homes, but I am all about transparency, and part of that is educating the consumer so that they know when they walk into a funeral home that it is a stand-up business and that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what I want you to see and want you to understand, that people in funeral homes are following the laws and they're following what they're supposed to do when you are there. So I'm going to run down some list of your rights when you're working with a funeral home, starting with you don't have to use a funeral home in many states. You can become a funeral service practitioner, so that you are actually the one who goes and files the death certificate and gets the burial permit or the cremation permit, and you facilitate taking care of your loved one. But that means you have to follow those rules and regulations, and you have to get those permits and certificates filed in a timely manner, and you have to be the one transporting your loved one. Maybe that doesn't work for everybody. I know a lot of people say, I don't even want to touch grandma's hand when she's in a casket. So are you able to facilitate all those things for your loved one yourself? And I think that's the question you have to ask yourself in those situations. You also have the right to take your loved one home. This includes if it's your baby, your child, your parent, anyone. You can bring your loved one to your house. Have your visitation at your home, have your funeral at your home. Just have them at your home for a period of time. Yes, a funeral home may not love this idea because they want to make sure that the experience is the best for you. And if the body is not with them, sometimes we feel like we're kind of losing control, because what if that body purges and we're not there? And what if the body leaks somehow and we're not there? You know, it makes us nervous just because there's a lot of unknowns because it's nature. And so as long as you're comfortable with that, by all means you can take the person home and work that out. You have the right to change funeral homes whenever you want. Initially, maybe a funeral home is called, they pick up your loved one, bring them into their care, and you're sitting in arrangements, and you really do not like the people you've encountered. Maybe you don't like the staff. Maybe you don't like the facility. Maybe you're just getting a really bad feeling in your gut. Or maybe just the pricing is not conducive to your budget. At any point, you have the right to say, I would like to make some calls and see if maybe I should be working with a different funeral home. Because the funeral home's probably going to feel the same way. They're not going to want to work with you if you can't establish a good relationship, because in the end, you're going to talk negatively about them probably if you don't like them. So step aside and make some phone calls and find somebody that you do line up more with on any of those levels. You will owe that funeral home for what they've done up to that point. So for the removal, for the preparation work if you had authorized it. So expect that you're going to have to pay something to that initial funeral home if they have done something up to that point. You have the right to view your loved one. They are your loved one. You cannot have that right taken away from you. It doesn't matter if they've been in an accident, they've been in a fire, you have the right to view them. Now, a funeral home may make you sign a waiver so that you can't go back and sue them for, mental anguish that you have down the road from having to see your loved one. But you have the right to see them. Now, they may counsel you on the condition of your loved one and why it may not be in your best interest to see them, but at least try and find a middle ground that you're both comfortable with, that maybe you just want to see their hand, or you need to see their foot, or you need something, maybe not see their whole body, but you do have the right. If that's what you want and that's what you need, you have the right to. Embalming. You do not have to have the body embalmed by any state law unless they are not going to be cremated or buried within a certain period of time. They may have to be refrigerated within a certain period of time, or they may have to be embalmed to cross state lines by a common carrier, like by a plane or a train. The funeral home may require embalming if you're having a public viewing. So there's different laws by different states, just like with anything I'm talking about. And so know what your state law actually is. Because there's sometimes that they say, oh, within 48 hours you need to be embalmed or buried or cremated, but it's not actually state law, it's just a guideline. And so know what the law is in your state to care for people who have died. So that way you know what your full right is. I could go down the list of every state, but we don't have time for that. Nobody wants to sit and listen to that. So lastly is what the FTC regulates at every funeral home in the country. They regulate many different items, but the main one is the general price list. So what you have the right to do is to call any funeral home and get the price list. You do not have to give them your name, your address, any information, but they need to provide to you pricing over the phone. You also have the right to walk into any funeral home, request a general price list in paper form for you to retain and take with you without giving them any information or without meeting with a funeral director or without meeting with a pre-need consultant. So you have the right to that information. So you can gather different price lists if that's what you really want to do and look at them. Just remember when you're comparing them, it's not always apples to apples. You may have one funeral home that has different items in their service charge, whereas another funeral home has different items in their service charge. So having discussion beyond just gathering that general price list is always good to do so that you understand the line items on it. So I'm going to go down a list of what the funeral rule under the FTC does say also about some other items. You only have to buy the funeral arrangements you want. So you don't have to buy a casket from the funeral home. You don't have to buy embalming if you don't want it, etc. You also don't have to buy a package. So funeral homes offer packages sometimes, but you don't have to buy everything in that. You can always go itemized, but you may find just like at McDonald's, if you want to buy 2 of the items, it's actually less expensive to get the 3rd item in that package. So not to compare funeral homes to McDonald's, but that always makes sense to people when you say, well, if you don't want the fries, you can buy the sandwich and the drink, but it's going to be more expensive than just buying the other 3 together. So look at the packages, look what's included, and look what your final total would be if you separated them out. You can get a written itemized price list like we had talked about, and you can get that pricing over the phone. You can also see a casket price list and a vault price list. Now when you're looking at those, you can always ask, are there other, caskets that are not on display that you have available? Because you may walk into the selection room and see just 20 caskets, but there's maybe 40 on the general price list. So there may be some less or more expensive ones that just aren't on there in person to look at. Same with the vaults. Make sure you know what all your options are. You receive a statement also after you make those arrangements. You're going to sign a statement, make sure it's all line itemized so you understand what you are signing. Get an explanation in writing if there's things that the cemetery requires, like the vault. The vault is not required by any state law. Each cemetery sets its own rules and regulations as to whether you need a vault. You can also, for cremation, use an alternative container. A casket and some kind of container is not required by state laws. It's by the crematories, and that's what they require is that somebody be in a rigid container. So the funeral home can offer to you either the corrugated box or a wooden casket or something, along those lines. There are different options for what you can purchase. You can provide a casket or an urn to the funeral home that you've purchased somewhere else. And they cannot charge you a delivery fee for that or a handling fee for you bringing in your own merchandise of a casket or an urn. However, a funeral home may require that you do the transfer of the cremated remains into the urn so that they don't damage the urn. That can be something that they stipulate. So kind of know your different rules and regulations and know what your rights are. That way when you're meeting with a funeral home, you're less likely, as we hear, to be taken advantage of or to have things told to you that you have to have, which you don't actually have to have. But if a funeral home requires, let's say, embalming, then that is what they require. but understand why it's required. Understand why they're having you do that. And yes, there's going to be funeral homes that want to just make more money because it's business and some people are more geared towards that. But don't look at it that as the whole. Don't look at that as the reason that most funeral homes require, let's say, embalming. So understand the reasons behind some of the regulations and some of the standards set in the funeral homes. But know your rights, and know your rights by the state you live in. So if you guys have questions, post them below. By all means, make sure you subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.